Hey guys, how's it going? Josh here, and I'll be reviewing Last Days of Superman. Last Days of Superman is the final arc of the New 52 Superman comic before Rebirth begins, and I just gotta say it's been a real treat. I mean, I remember reading the beginning of the New 52, New 52 Superman number 1, Action Comics number 1, even Justice League number 1, and we start off with a young, brash, hot-headed, inexperienced Superman, much different than the one we left off before New 52 began. And I remember reading it and just being like, this is totally different. I want to see where they go with it. And it's really cool to see, 5 years later at the ending of the New 52, where the Superman has left off at. I mean, his growth over the past few years has been great to watch. It's been a treat to read, I should say. And it's just, I'm really happy with what we've gotten, basically. And it's really bittersweet to say goodbye to him. But I'm looking forward to Rebirth. So I really hope they don't, end this Superman off in vain of a bad Superman, which I have full faith in them doing this well with Rebirth. So let's get right into the review of this book. So to give you guys a brief synopsis of the story, because I'm not going to go too in depth, I don't want to spoil anything. Superman is dying, basically, kind of like an all-star Superman, where his body is dying. This is what's happening to this New 52 Superman, and a majority of this book is him trying to put things in place so that when he does die, there is a peaceful transition. Example being Supergirl being his successor, essentially, in protecting Earth. That's one thing he wants to do. Another thing is getting some sort of kind of resolution with Wonder Woman because of how their relationship's gone over the past few years, things like that. That's just two examples of what's going on in the book. Another one is an imposter Superman going around and Superman trying to basically protect his legacy before he dies by defeating this imposter Superman. But the big deal is that this imposter has his memories and very similar powers, and it's very much Superman fighting himself as much as him protecting his legacy. And it's really interesting to read. I thought they did a really good job with what they were giving, considering where this could have easily gone. So go read the book, guys. Like I said before, I intentionally didn't say much of the plot. I just said a good general overview, just because I want you guys to read it, support the official release, things like that, because this is the final issue of New 52 Superman. It is something special. You guys should go read it. So let's get into the pros. The pros of the creative team. They have delivered, especially Tomasi, good writing on his part. He has helped, and the whole creative team in general has helped, helped give us, I should say, one of the best New 52 Superman stories we have received in all of the New 52. I'm talking between Action, Superman, Justice League, JLA, Batman Superman, Superman Wonder Woman, all that. This has been a really good storyline to end the New 52 Superman off with, and I'm really happy with what we got. I gotta say it. The other one is we got really nice all-star Superman vibes, and by that I mean the whole Superman dying thing. That's the most obvious one. But another thing is in all-star Superman, we got a humble Superman that had a very interesting perspective on things because he was dying. And we had that in this also. This Superman was concerned about basically where he would leave off if he died. And what it actually reminded me of is Steve Jobs. If you listen, I listen to a lot of speeches from people like Steve Jobs. And if you listen to Steve Jobs speak before he learned he had cancer and after he learned he had cancer, he's a totally different person in the way he speaks, what he says when he speaks. And I kind of got that kind of feeling when reading this comic. This Superman felt a lot different than the Superman we had before he knew he was dying. And I don't know if it was just me because of the things I've listened to in the past, like I said before, Steve Jobs, things like that. But this book really resonated with me in that regard. I mean, I really enjoyed seeing that difference in personality, that newfound humbleness, for example. I really did enjoy reading that, which is something Superman had in All-Star Superman, which is why I mentioned All-Star Superman beyond the fact that Superman is dying in both stories. Another thing is the Big Ten have an appearance. If you don't know who the Big Ten are, they're basically the Chinese Avengers, but in the DC universe. They have an appearance partially to help set up the new Chinese Superman series, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, they're not that well known to a lot of people, and they're not that used often either. So I do hope they get a bigger presence with this new Chinese Superman book coming out soon with Rebirth. But like I said before, I mean, it was just really nice to see them in general. And I hope they do get more presence because I feel like they're underutilized considering all the world events that goes on and all the world teams. I mean, they don't all have to be based in America. It'd be nice, in comics to, get a little bit, other nations involved. Another bonus, another pro to add to the list is this issue, the storyline from the get-go helped establish a timeline of the recent events, helped us establish some sort of continuity. So we know where Darkseid War, we know where Savage Dawn, and we know where the JLA Rao storyline all fit within the continuity of Superman for the New 52. And that was really nice to read, especially the way they used it in explaining Superman's kind of body breaking down, basically. I really did enjoy that. I'm not going to spoil it too much, like I said before. I want you guys to read it. But do know there is a good explanation for Superman's body dying, or Superman dying, I should say, and his body breaking down. There's a good reason for that. And also, it kind of helps make sense of the past, things that have been happening in comics. Because Superman's body, when you really think about it, has gone through some crazy changes in the past year or so. And then the last pro is a nice, heartfelt conclusion involving his whole supporting cast. I mean, it would have been easy to just have Lois, Wonder Woman, Batman, Supergirl, maybe. It would have been really easy to do that and really kind of obvious, but they went the extra mile. We got Steel, we got Lana Lang. They even revisited some characters from the previous storylines, such as Ulysses. And I mean, it was really cool to see. I mean, a lot of that was also giving each character like not a conclusion, but a good goodbye. Some closure with Superman before he died, especially Lana. That was really important for that character. But I mean, it was just really nice to see that. It showed some care from the creative team. I know I've praised the creative team a lot already in this review, but it showed a lot of care on their part of making sure they depart the Superman right. And I, as a reader, really appreciate that. And I, as a fan, really appreciate that also. So, I can't be all positive, though. I have just two negatives, two cons. And the first one, two con-Ls, and the first one is the interaction between the New 52 Superman and the pre-New 52 Superman was very brief and very disappointing. It left you very disappointed and very underwhelmed, I have to say, especially with how much they initially hyped it. I mean, they were hyping it up to be a huge deal at first, and then they kind of stopped hyping it up so much, maybe because they realized it wasn't as, much interaction as they kind of led on to be. But I mean, even so, they only exchanged like 3 sentences with each other. I don't know if that's the literal 3 sentences, but it felt like only 3 sentences. I mean, they didn't really get anywhere. They didn't really say, I'm Superman from the universe. Hi, I'm also you, anything like that. It was more just like, who are you? Doesn't matter. That's basically how it went. And it just kind of felt really cheap when we know this pre-New 52 Superman is going to replace the New 52 Superman. So it would have been nice if we could have had some sort of passing of the baton. Even though we know the pre-New 52 Superman came first, it still felt like it would have been appropriate considering that Superman is replacing the newer one, if that makes sense. So I felt like they kind of screwed up a little bit on that regard. The second one is this imposter, this final foe for Superman in this storyline he just kind of felt unnecessary. I mean, I understand possibly his purposing, not his purposing, but his purpose, being, he's just like Clark. So it's kind of like Superman fighting himself. And also a big deal of, preserving his legacy and what does his legacy really mean? And what does he mean to other people? Things like that. I understand that, even though they already explored that in the previous story arcs, especially once his public identity was kind of unveiled. They did go into his legacy a bit, what Superman means, stuff like that. But I don't think they really handled it right because it really just came off more as distracting from what the beginning of the storyline was, which was Superman trying to peacefully transition his death as much as possible. And I mean, that was very interesting. And I was really looking forward to seeing more of that, especially more interaction with him and other characters before he passed. And I just felt like this imposter Superman really took away from that and really kind of didn't add anything really positive to the comic as much as him just being a physical threat. I mean, I felt like he was really just there to be a physical threat to Superman, honestly, if I'm just speaking honestly. But if I had to give this a score, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. It's been a treat. I really, hope with Rebirth, Superman is good, and that's about it. So go read this issue, guys, and I'll see you guys later.